Good morning, friends. In this video we are going to discuss about the solid state, chapter 1 of class 12th. How can we define solid? This is the state of matter which have definite shape as well as definite volume. Now you can divide solids in two categories. One is crystalline solid and second is amorphous solid. You can see the difference between these two types of solid substance. Here you can see a regular arrangement of particles, and on other side you can see it is irregular or random arrangement. So this is the basic difference between crystalline solid and amorphous solid. The crystalline substance have regular three-dimensional arrangement of particles. Here you can see only two-dimensional arrangement. This is the limitation of our pen and paper. We cannot draw here 3D structure, but it is in fact a 3D structure. B particles occupy over A particles, so it is not a single layer. The second layer will start with B, the third layer will start with A, the fourth layer will start with B, and in this way it will be a three-dimensional structure. Here you can see irregular arrangement, random arrangement, and this is known as amorphous solid. So the first question for us, what are the differences between crystalline and amorphous solid? The first difference is a crystalline solid has regular three-dimensional arrangement, as you can see here, and this is also known as long range order. Long range order means it is not applicable for 5, 6, 7, 8 rows or column. It is applicable for billions of particles, and therefore it is considered as long range order. Here this is irregular random arrangement. You can say it has short range order. Now crystalline solids have sharp melting point. The complete solid can melt at a particular temperature. The reason you can see here, the type of bonds are identical, and because the bonds are identical, all the bonds have same energy, so the bonds can break at same temperature, at a particular temperature. Therefore they have a sharp melting point. But here you can see a variety of chemical bonds. These A are very close to each other, these A are very far to each other. Here this is a bond between B and B, here bond between A and B. So type of bonds are different, type of force are different, therefore they break at different temperature. It looks like the weakest bond here as per the distance between particle. Such type of bonds can break at very low temperature, maybe less than room temperature, and this type of bonds which are stronger one you can see here, and this bond is stronger, they can break maybe at very high temperature, maybe 500 degrees Celsius or even more temperature. So they melt at a particular temperature which is considered as sharp melting point, and they melt over long range of temperature. The next difference is crystalline solids have definite enthalpy of fusion. Now enthalpy of fusion means that it is energy required to convert 1 mole of solid into liquid at melting point. Now suppose this is 1 mole of substance which comprises 2 A particles and 2 B particle, and let the energy of this bond is X. So to melt this 1 mole we required to give 4x energy, X for each bond, so it is 4x energy. Now if you melt this particular 1 mole, once again the same amount of energy required because same type of bonds are there, same number of bonds are there. If you melt this 1 mole, once again it required same 4x amount of energy. So whichever 1 mole is melted here, it required a definite amount of enthalpy which is known as enthalpy of fusion. So this is a property of crystalline solids, that they have a constant or definite enthalpy of fusion. But here you can see if this is 1 mole, 2A and 2B, and here this is 1 mole, so you can see now easily that the type of bonds may be same but the force is different. Here A and A is very close, but here they are far away from each other. Here a moderate distance between AB, but there is long distance between A and B. So to melt this particular 1 mole and to melt this particular 1 mole, we have to give different amount of energy. That is why they have They do not have constant enthalpy of fusion, but they have constant enthalpy of fusion. Another property is crystalline solids, they have cleavage property. Now cleavage property means whenever the crystalline solids are broken down into smaller particles, the smaller particles also have the same type of pattern, which we can say regular pattern on their edges. Why it is so? Look at here. Right now on the edge you can see A and B. These are two type of particles at alternate position. Now if we break from here, once again this is the newly formed edge and it has same A and B at alternate position. If you break it from here, once again it is A, B, A, B. And A and B, you know that these are two different type of particles. Let A is small and B is big particle. Once again it's small particle, once again it is big particle. So you can see here that it has a zigzag pattern. If you cleave the particle from here, once again it will be a zigzag pattern, a big small particle. If you break here, once again it is same zigzag pattern. So whenever it is broken down, the surface have a regular pattern, that is known as cleavage property. Such type of property is not possible here. The reason is same random arrangement. Another point, because of this regular pattern, they reflect light on a particular direction, and therefore such type of solid shines. They reflect light in all possible direction, and therefore they have dull appearance. So they shine, they have dull appearance, amorphous solids have dull appearance, cleavage property, they have regular pattern over edges, and they do not have such type of property. The last point is they are anisotropic in nature. Now this is interesting. Though they have regular three-dimensional arrangement, we are talking about crystalline solid, they have regular three-dimensional arrangement of particle, but certain physical properties, if they measured through different direction or through different plane, they will have different magnitude in case of crystalline solid. I repeat, if you measure certain physical properties through different directions, through different plane in crystalline solids, they have different magnitude for it. For example, the density, refractive index, if they measure through different plane or different direction, they will have different magnitude here. The reason you can see here, this is representation of crystalline solid. Now suppose we are calculating refractive index through this particular direction, and you can see here only one type of particles, red particles are lying in this direction. And if you measure from here, again only one type of particle, it is blue particle only. If you measure from this direction, it is 50% red particles and 50% blue particle. When the particles are changed, their size is changed, their density will change, and therefore the magnitude of refractive index will also have different value. The density will have different value. We will not measure here density with the formula, traditional formula, mass upon volume, but it is n lambda equals to 2d sine theta. This is the formula which is used to calculate density here, not part of our syllabus, but we can calculate density with this formula. Here lambda is wavelength and etc. But the value of density and refractive index will have different values here in crystalline solid, and this is known as anisotropic in nature. Now here you can see irregular random arrangement, and therefore whether we calculate density through this direction, through this direction, the number of particles, the type of particles remain same, and therefore they have same value for density, refractive index and other properties also. Now a few more questions with respect to amorphous solid. First is, these are three best example for amorphous solid for us. It is plastic, rubber and glass. The first question is, why plastic, rubber, glass or amorphous solid are pseudo-solid, highly viscous liquid, or they are also known as supercooled liquid. Pseudo-solid means it is false solid. Now the reason is these all are amorphous solid, and we have discussed that some of the particles are bonded with very weak force in case of amorphous. Now this bond can be break even at room temperature. Now, because this bond can break at room temperature, so these particles are in motion even at room temperature. And because some of the particles are in motion, you can't say they are perfect solid, you can say they are pseudo solid. As we know that in solid the particles can't move, but here such type of particles are in motion and therefore they are considered as pseudo solid. Now, why they are known as highly viscous liquid or supercooled liquid? The reason is these particles which are in motion, they move at extreme slow speed. And you know the mobility of liquid and viscosity, they are inversely proportional to each other. A more viscous liquid flow at less speed. Because they move at very low speed, therefore you can say they are highly viscous liquid. Viscosity and temperature are also inversely proportional to each other. Because they have high viscosity, theoretically you can say their temperature is very low and therefore they are considered as supercooled liquid. So answer of first part, why they are pseudo solid, you have to simply write because some of the particles are in motion even at room temperature. And answer for this two part, highly viscous liquid and supercooled liquid, you have to write they are amorphous solid, particles are in motion and these particles move at extreme slow speed. That's why they are called as highly viscous liquid or supercooled liquid. In the same concept, you have another question, why glass becomes thick at bottom after a number of years. It may be after 100 of years. You can see the shape of glass change like this, it becomes thick at bottom. The reason is once again, you have to start glass is amorphous solid in which particles are in motion, particles move uh, toward down because of gravity and that's why glass become thick at bottom after certain number of years. Next question is, what are similarity between quartz and glass and how can you change quartz into glass and then glass into quartz? The first point, similarity between quartz and glass. Quartz is SiO2 and more important for us is quartz is example of a crystalline solid. This is a crystalline solid. Glass is example of amorphous solid and the one of the main component of glass is also SiO2, that is silica. So chemically they are similar, SiO2, but physically it is a crystalline solid and this is amorphous solid. The question is how can you convert quartz into glass and glass into quartz? Now to convert quartz into glass, first because this is a regular arrangement and we have to convert them into irregular or random arrangement, first you need to induce motion in particles. And to start motion in particle, you have to melt quartz. Once you melt the quartz, here the particles are in motion, they can change their position and then implement sudden cooling. When you implement here sudden cooling, the particles freeze without occupying a particular position. It will give us a random arrangement. It means it will give us amorphous solid. Melting followed by sudden cooling. This is also known as quenching. So by quenching, melting followed by sudden cooling, you can convert quartz into glass. Another question, how can we convert glass into quartz? It means a amorphous substance into crystalline substance. Here once again random arrangement, we need to convert into regular three-dimensional arrangement. The first process is same, once again you need to melt it so that particles are in motion and then use slow cooling here. During slow cooling, before particle freezes, they occupy their regular position. The particles provided enough time to acquire the regular position and therefore finally it will convert into crystalline substance. This process is also known as annealing. So this is again a good question, how can we convert amorphous into crystalline or crystalline into amorphous, or you can say quartz into glass and glass into quartz. Now sometimes glass obtained from ancient region along with fossils and other ways, glass obtained from ancient region look like milky. The reason is it is because of some crystallization takes place here and because of crystallization glass occur milky in its appearance. Glass look like milky. It may be possible that the glass is suspended under earth crust, and due to high temperature of earth crust, glass melt over long time of period. It solidified, so slow cooling, melting followed by slow cooling, it results in formation of crystalline solid. Now, so far we have discussed about crystalline amorphous. Now, the rest of the chapter is only for crystalline solid. So here the first point in crystalline solid, and it is type of crystalline solid. There are four type of crystalline solids. We can divide all crystalline solids in four category. First is ionic solid. Examples are all ionic compound like sodium chloride. In sodium chloride, you know that Na plus Cl minus, they occupied at alternate position, plus minus, similarly here minus plus minus plus, and then once again sodium chloride sodium. Now, due to strong force of attraction between opposite ion, they have very high melting point. So you have to remember two properties here, two properties. One is melting point, about its melting point, and second is about its conductivity. So due to strong force of attraction between ions, they have high melting point. What about conductors? You know that they are insulator in solid state because ions are not able to move, ions are not free to move. But in aqueous solution and in molten state, they are good conductor of electricity. Second, metallic solid includes all metals. Here also, this is metal ion, electron, metal ion, electron. Again, a strong force of attraction between opposite ions, in fact opposite charge. Due to strong force between opposite charge, this is known as metallic bond. Once again, they have high melting point, and they are conductor in solid as well as in molten state due to presence of free electron. So you may given this type of properties, a solid has high melting point and it is conductor in solid state. Identify type of crystalline solid, your answer will be metallic solid. Third is molecular solid. Now here the solids can be given or represented by a molecular formula like phosphorus, sulfur, benzene. Now benzene is liquid, but below its freezing point, it will be in solid state, and then it will be considered as molecular solid. Whichever solid can be represented by a molecular formula is categorized as molecular solid. So whether it is P4, acid, sulfur, benzene, iodine, or ice. Now generally they have van der Waals force, like I2 and I2 have van der Waals force, and between water molecules we know that is hydrogen bond. Both van der Waals bond as well as hydrogen bond is much weaker as compared to metallic bond or ionic bond, and therefore they have comparatively low melting and boiling point. And we also know that they are insulator of electricity. They neither have electrons nor have ions for conduction, and therefore they are insulator of electricity. Fourth is covalent or network solid. Now here they have infinite atoms. All infinite atoms are bonded with each other through covalent bond. Because of covalent bond, they have very high melting point, and covalent bond means they again neither have electrons nor ions for conductivity, so they are also insulator. High melting point and insulator. Now here you cannot give their molecular formula, you can give only empirical formula for such solid. For example, it is aluminum nitride, silicon carbide. This is not molecular formula, they are empirical formula. You have used this structure in class 11. Can you give its empirical formula and some other examples of covalent or network solid? So its empirical formula is SiO2, it is silica, and some other examples of covalent or network solid which fulfill these requirements is graphite and diamond. Next point is unit cell and crystal lattice. Now crystal means it is regular, lattice means arrangement. So you can see this is, we already discussed about crystalline solid. They have regular three-dimensional arrangement of particle, and this regular three-dimensional arrangement of particle is known as crystal lattice. In this complete crystal lattice, look at here, if I enclose this particular part, there is some speciality of this enclosed part. The same part, if I repeat the same part again and again in left side, right side, above it, below it, then it will convert into the complete crystal. For example, this part start with A, end at A, and here you can see once again it is start with A, and this both are 100% identical part. This is again identical part, this is again identical part. So this particular part, this is the smallest part which on repetition convert into complete crystal, and this smallest part is known as unit cell. Remember, here unit cell doesn't look like a square, but unit cell look like a cube. This is our limitation. We cannot draw here a cubical unit cell, but in fact this is not only the unit cell, because A, just over A, it will be a B particle, just over B it will be A particle. Now when you enclose this A, B and A, then it will be a complete part which on repetition over it and below it gives the complete crystal. So it will be a cubical particle, and this smallest three-dimensional cubical particle which on repetition convert into entire crystal is known as unit cell. Have you seen any such type of structure in day-to-day life? Now, this is the way how the unit cell looks like. We have drawn only this particular phase. It is A, then it is A, it is also A, it is also A, and here we have drawn B particle. Now A, then it will be B, and this is A. So this complete part will be considered as unit cell, a cubical structure. A cube has three edges: its width, its depth and its height, and these edges are represented here by symbol A, B and C. As well as at any corner you can see there are three angles here, and these angles are represented by symbols alpha, beta, gamma. On the basis of these edges and on the basis of angles also, so far 14 different type of unit cell have been identified. They are not hypothetical, they have been identified. They have been identified by Brevis, and that's why they are known as Brevis lattice. So far 14 different type of Brevis lattice. They all are different on the basis of edges, or on the basis of angles, or on the basis of both edges as well as angle. So all the 14 different type of unit cells or Brevis lattice you can access from your textbook. Here these are four important type of unit cell. You have to remember dimensions for four unit cells, these four unit cells. The first is cubic unit cell. Here A equal to B equal to C. This is the simplest type of unit cell. All three edges are of equal length, all three angles are of 90 degree. Therefore this is a perfect cube. Tetragonal, here two edges of same length, A equals to B, and third edge is not of equal length, so A equal to B, but it is not equals to C. Alpha, beta, gamma, they are of 90 degree here. You can think for tetragonal unit cell any structure which is similar to tetragonal unit cell in day-to-day life. Just try to think it. Similarly, you can remember for hexagonal and monoclinic unit cell, there are 10 more type of unit cell, but no need to memorize all this. These are four common type of unit cell. In our syllabus, you have to remember only cubic unit cell. Now, type of cubic unit cell. There are four type of cubic unit cell. The first is simple, which is also known as basic or primitive unit cell. Here lattice points are placed only at corners. Now lattice point means this is particle, it may be atom, it may be molecule, it may be ion, but these lattice points are only at corners. Like here, this is the position of lattice point. You know that there are 8 corners in a unit cell, and each and every corner occupied by one lattice point. So here lattice points are only at corners. Such type of unit cell is known as simple, basic or primitive. Second is body centered cell. It is in short known as BCC. Here lattice points are at corners like this, plus center of cell. So there is one lattice point placed at center of unit cell in addition to lattice points placed at corners. Face centered unit cell. Now here It is known as FCC, face-centered unit cell. The particles are placed at corners plus center of each face. You can see in this structure there are 6 phases. You also know that there are 6 phases in a cube. So particle placed at corners, here I draw only one phase, and on the each phase a particle placed at center of phase. So all the corners as well as all the center of phases occupied by one lattice point, and the last is and centered unit cell. Here particles are placed at corners as well as center of any two opposite phase. Any two opposite phase means, I hope it is easy to understand. If one particle placed here at roof, then one particle placed at center of floor. So these are two particles occupied at center of opposite phase in addition to particles at corners. This is known as and centered unit cell. Contribution by a particle placed at different positions. Now what is the positions? How much contribution is made by a particle placed at different position? To understand, look at here one example. These are the door, these are 3 room A, B and C, and these are representation of door. Can you count here how many doors in room B? How many doors in room B? If your answer is 2, then you are wrong, because if the door in B room is 2, in C room it is 1, in A it is 1, then total number of doors are 4, but you can see here only 2 doors. The right answer is B has only one door, and the reason is here the door is shared between A and B. This door is shared in between A and B. So because this is shared between A and B, here you will count half door, and here also you will count half door. Same goes here, this door shared between B and C. So for B it is half and C it is half. And now you can see here the total door in A is half, B is half plus half equal to 1, and C is half. In fact, the number of total doors are 2, which you can see in this picture. Same goes here. The particles which are placed at corner, not only part of that unit cell in which you can see this particle. For example, here this particle placed at corner, so this is not belong to this unit cell only. This is shared between this and this also. So you can't count here 1 for this unit cell. You will count either half if it is shared between 2. You will count 1/4 if it is shared between 4. You will count 1/8 if it is shared in 8 total unit cells. So first check here face. Face means it is just like wall of your room. If a window placed on a wall, then the window or the door placed on the wall, it is shared between 2 rooms as we have seen here, and therefore the contribution of lattice point per unit cell will be only half, because the wall is shared between 2, so its contribution in one unit cell will be half. Similarly, an edge, look at the edge of your room, and the edge is shared in between 4, therefore its contribution for one particular unit cell is 1/4. Center of unit cell, center of room, definitely it is a part of that particular room only, that's why its contribution is 1. And then it is face centered, corners. A corner is shared between 8, you can see here this is the corner. 4 room, you can see in your room, if you construct rooms around each room in which you are sitting, you draw the rooms in all possible directions, you can see a corner. Above it, a corner is shared between 4, and over it, when you draw 4 more rooms, it will be shared. So in total, 8 rooms or 8 unit cell, a corner is shared, and therefore its contribution is 1/8. So remember, you cannot count 1, 2, 3, 4 simply. If a particle placed at corner, you need to count as 1/8, phase 1/2, edge 1/4, and center its complete contribution. Now you can calculate number of lattice points per unit cell, which is symbolized by capital Z. For simple unit cell, we know now 8 corners, and the contribution of corner is only 1/8. So therefore, total number of particle is only 1. I repeat, 8 corners, the contribution of each particle, each corner is only 1 by 8. So total number of particle is only 1. So only one particle present per unit cell in simple unit cell. Now calculate for FCC and BCC also. For FCC, 8 corners plus it is 6 phase and contribution of phase is only half, so it is 4. In BCC, once again 8 corners plus 1 particle placed at center and the contribution of center is 1, so it is 2. And similarly end center, here's 8 corners plus any 2 opposite phase and contribution of phase is half, so it is also 2. So these are the number of particles placed per unit cell. Now this is question for you. A simple question: A particles at corners, B particles are at phases. What is its empirical formula? If A is at corner, then its contribution is 1 by 8. Total number of particles are 8. So per unit cell there is only 1 particle of A. B particles are on phases. 6 phase, contribution is half. Number of B particles per unit cell is 3, and therefore empirical formula A1 B3. This is its empirical formula. This is question for you. A occupy corners, B occupy 50% phase, and C occupy 25% of edges. You need to calculate its empirical formula. 2 minutes for it. Quickly do this question. So here 1 particle of A, 50% phase means out of total 6, 50% means 3 phases, and the contribution of phase we know half, so 1.5 particles of B per unit cell, 25% of edges. The total number of edges are 12. 25% of 12 is only 3. Contribution of edge, contribution of edge is 1 by 4, so it is 0.75. So 1.5 and it is 0.75. Now you can write its empirical formula by multiplying with a whole number. So we multiply this by 4 and therefore it is A4, B6 and C3. This will be its empirical formula. The next part we will discuss in next video. Till date, stay home, stay safe and have a nice day.